There we go. Enjoy a little bit of music in the background. Yeah. We're not on Instagram. We are on Facebook as Lost Tribe Gaming. And we're we game on Twitch. So twitch.tv/Lost Tribe Gaming. There has the address on, right? Yeah. Thank you.
I just did a search and it shows up on basically every social media.
Yeah, I do have something on Twitter, but I don't really use it. And I think maybe I did something for Instagram, but I don't really use it. So again, it's one of those things like when they talk about getting a media presence out there, oh, get on all the social medias. No, it is an utter waste of time, and honestly, if you have one crowd that is only watching you, say, on Instagram, they're probably not going to watch you anywhere else. So even if you're throwing up a media post or something, okay, maybe I get a like, but it's not going to help us as far as traffic is concerned. So we just kind of narrowed it down to pretty much Facebook and Twitch, which is where we do everything, and then we upload everything to YouTube. So YouTube's great because I can house all of our past episodes on there. Whereas with Twitter, or not Twitter, but not Instagram, Twitch. Where Twitch, now that I'm an affiliate, gives us up to a month, but after that it goes away. So unless I specifically upload something there, it's not going to hang out. And I don't want to have to run a game and then have it fall off and then go back through and upload again when I can just throw it all on YouTube and, it's good to go. Okay, so I guess we can go ahead and get started. It looks like everything's set up. So, and it's probably going to beep at us a couple times as it eventually chimes out, which that's okay. Can everybody hear us okay?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Is it coming through the mics, or are you just hearing?
I think we're just hearing you.
Oh, that would be our luck.
Yeah.
Try.
Yeah, the mics definitely are working. Obviously.
Maybe we just gotta chew on them.
Yeah. Yeah.
You?
Kiss the mics.
No.
That's how they work. That's what they're there for.
Fine. Okay, so Ms. Moderator, why don't you take it away?
Okay, so welcome everyone, bright and early again, earlier than yesterday, which I was a little sad about. Okay, so we're Lost Tribes Gaming. We are a regular human gaming group.
You did it again.
It's done on purpose.
As opposed to all the vampires and stuff that we play.
Jackie Daytona, regular human play group.
We're a regular gaming group of normal people that stream on Twitch, and we just thought, we've tried a lot of stuff and thought we had something to share. So we stream on Twitch, and we're also, as per our discussion a little while ago, we're also on Facebook, and then you can find our videos on YouTube too.
Yep, all of our past episodes on YouTube.
So this panel is Tabletop RPGs and You, or Playing Outside the Dungeon. So the purpose of this panel was, since the popularity of things like Critical Role, D&D has become kind of the super mainstream now. You even have really weird product tie-ins with fruit snacks and weird stuff.
Oh, they had that, what was it in Spain? They had the Dungeons and Dragons car commercial. They recast the original people from the cartoon.
Oh, wow.
For specific, so if you can find it, it's on YouTube. It's really cool. It's not like super comedy, but the effort they put into it, like they got all the characters, and at the very end, the Dungeon Master shows up.
Wow.
So it was pretty cool.
So for those people who have been playing for 20, 30, 40 years, that's kind of crazy. But with the influx of new interest and new players, you might be thinking, what else is there besides Dungeons and Dragons? And our gaming group has a tendency to try a lot of different systems. Currently we play mainly Vampire the Masquerade. We have 2 games going. We also play a Marvel superheroes game. We play Street Fighter and Cyberpunk 2020. And other past games that we've played include Firefly, Mass Effect, based on the D&D 5th edition rules. It's a homebrew, so it's free. You can go look it up.
Whole team got together and assembled that with pictures and everything.
Cool.
It's amazing.
Shout out to my sister. We played sisters in that game. I don't know, what else have we played?
We played All Flesh Must Be Eaten.
Yeah, that we didn't stream that one. That's a zombie survival game.
Yes, but it's a. This is actually a great segue into talking about other games. It's a. I don't think it's in print anymore, but I believe you can still find the PDFs available on DriveThruRPG through Eden Studios. I know their website is still up, but I tended to find most of my books secondhand at places like Bookman's. So like Dungeons and Dragons, its core element is fantasy, right?
Okay, sorry, finish your thought first.
Okay, but with All Flesh Must Be Eaten, the core element is obviously zombies. But with that, you could be Old West zombies. You could be Kung Fu zombies. You could be magic power zombies. You could be any
as a
number
note,
of things.
you don't play as zombies. You are running from the zombies.
Correct. Basically, all the attachments that essentially go into it come up with like popular trope elements from like movies, but just throw in the zombie element. So if you ever wanted to play Unforgiven, but with zombies, you could do that, and it's all kinds of fun. Like they're fairly quick and dynamic rules that help get you into game. And they're not too difficult to understand, although they're pretty different if your norm is a D20 based system like Dungeons and Dragons. So. Okay,
so different things that you want to consider if you have only been exposed to D&D. D&D has certain like emphasis in its storytelling and its gameplay, like Jerome said, fantasy, obviously. There's also, it can have a tendency to be more, maybe crunchy is not the word, but like the point of the game, depending on your DM, is beating stuff and getting loot for it. So the whole dungeon crawler aspect, there may or may not be more story involved depending on your DM and your play style. There can be, but originally it was not meant to be played that way. That's just not the emphasis that it was created with. And so there's a variety of types of games and what the essence of the game is. There's like a whole spectrum. So with Vampire the Masquerade, it is much less about the combat and it's more about the intrigue. It's more about the role play, the storytelling, the politics. So that's a very acting heavy system and game. What are some of the other types of, like Jerome said, there's like a zombie survival type thing where, whereas Vampire is more about the intrigue and politicking and humanity. And then
or lack thereof.
trying to fight. It's called a personal horror game, which is you are fighting against your tendency as a vampire to become more inhumane. So you're fighting against the beast. So that's a big emphasis of the game. With a zombie game, it's the emphasis is surviving against the zombies.
Yeah, survival horror. Yeah.
Right.
Like any
Like
of
a
your
lot of
typical
video games.
zombie films. Yeah. Walking Dead.
So what are some other types of systems as far as what they're about?
We can go old school. Some of them you may or may not be able to find. If you can, it's worth it. And I know I'm going to get a chuckle out of Rachel for this one. Hong Kong Action Theater is the bomb, if you can find it. The idea behind it is it takes you and splits you essentially into two. You are your character, and your character is applying for roles in the upcoming movie, which is the adventure you're about to play. And you have a certain amount of star points that you can use, and when the movie is in casting, which is literally what it's called, you are bidding to the person who's running it, the director, to see if you get that role. Now, there's a strategy in that. You don't want to throw all your star points out there, because your star points are also something you can use to affect dynamics in game. Much like the when you get like a legendary point in Dungeons & Dragons, you get like a free reroll or do something like really cool. You can do something like that. So if you gamble and you're like, okay, well, and this is kind of true if you think about movies that you really like, but you happen to see like Donnie Yen appeared in a lot of bigger budget films, but before he was a big name here. So you pop all of a sudden because he's in some minor, oh, that's Donnie Yen! You know, so you might be able to pull off something like that. You're like, okay, well, I'm gonna play Thug #1, like that's its actual role. But for whatever reason, you take, when your scene comes up, maybe you don't even really have any speaking parts, but you just start killing it on combat. Well, when the movie is over and you're about ready to progress to the next one, you may get extra star points, which then helps you bid for the next role or try to do wild stuff thereafter. They had 2 editions of that at Hong Kong Action Theater. You'd probably be better served finding the 2nd edition, which was a little bit more revised. But the guys who made that game were so in love with the films that came out of Hong Kong and China at that time. Like it exudes like geekdom and love for those movies. Like they list all kinds of movie types and how you could format that into your own adventure. They've got, you have other things we were talking about in the last panel about essentially like merits and flaws, give your character flaws. Well, you have things kind of like that in this game system, but they're like, they're things like for example, Arnold Schwarzenegger's catchphrases. Like he always has some sort of one-liner or zinger that pops out there, right? That plays a part. Or maybe you're like Chow Yun-fat. If you look at some of his earlier films, he was known for chewing on a chopstick, or not chopstick, but a toothpick. Like just when he popped it in, you knew stuff was about to go down. You know, so like you have that. You have bad dubbing, which is kind of unique to this game system. If you flub on like a charisma check or something, and you're like, oh, that probably no. I typically have bad dubbing in my movies. There's usually a spot in there that gets jacked up. I want to redo that, and so you claim you're like, for some reason, you know, the sync wasn't there. You get to redo that social scene real quick to kind of save your butt or maybe figure it out. So that's one that I would love to get back to because the dynamic, that game is so fun, but it is a more structured game. You can't really do as free form as other games can, because again, you're having to create the movie. So you have to be a little bit more cinematic in scope when you're casting things out.
For me, I think right now one of my favorite games, and they know this, is going to be Street Fighter. It's a D10 system by White Wolf, same as the vampire game that we play. And I like the Street Fighter because I'm learning a martial art, you know, that I wasn't familiar with, even though I've played similar before. And it's you're playing, like, I mean, if you've seen the movie at all, you know, the one with Jean-Claude Van Damme and Raoul and Julia. I don't care. I liked that movie. It was meant to be cheesy. It was based off a video game. What do you expect? But it's got I like this because it's got a storyline. We're figuring it out as we go, but we're also throwing in these tournaments and fights. So we're trying to juggle real life with trying to make a name for ourselves as a fighter. And it's fun trying to incorporate that and not like go crazy. So I've been enjoying that personally a lot, and yeah, and Vampire, those are my two big ones right now.
Yeah.
Well, and D&D, but we're not here to talk about that.
Yeah, with Street Fighter, when they made those rules, they focused primarily on the 80s and 90s films of that time frame. So we're talking like The Quest, Kickboxer, Bloodsport, so most Jean-Claude Van Damme films. Jackie Chan, some of his zany action films, they got in there. Also, many of the special powers, when you flip to the book, you'll see lifted directly from Mortal Kombat, which was really popular at that time. So you got things like Ice Blast and Cartwheel Kick, so.
And you can find these books on PDF now. They don't make them in print anymore. If you find them, you're lucky. He's got a few that he's managed to find, but you can find them in PDF form all the time. So, and it's really easy to get.
Well, yeah, Street Fighter. If you're interested in that one, the White Wolf lost the licensing to the game system. They've never bothered to renew it. It's true. Go fig. And some fans have gotten online, and it's free to download. You can find it in a couple different spots. They gave it a 20th anniversary edition and basically combined all of the rules that had been in other books all into one big book. So you don't need to go and try to find all of it. You can find the one PDF, and it's free to download. It's been that way for years now.
So that was going to be my next question, is say you're interested in finding out more about some kind of game, and you want to find out how to play it, maybe get the manual. Like, where do you look for these materials, and how can you find examples of playthrough?
I could probably start off with that. So the first thing, obviously if you're familiar with drive-through RPG, most of the game systems, including ones that are no longer in print, because they don't have to obviously do much except, I think, maybe renew their copyright to whatever, or their trademarks, whatever they have. It's easier for them to keep some of those up there in PDF format. So a lot of older games you can find up on there if you're interested in checking it out.
At Drive-Through RPG?
drivethrurpg.com. Also, if you want to, it's hard with that, because that's kind of like looking through a bookstore without really being able to flip through the book. So you can look at the images, you can kind of get attracted to what they're selling, but unless somebody has written a pretty good write-up, which is kind of sparse sometimes on their site, you don't really get a lot of reviews on there. A lot of people, if they like it, they'll just put like 4 or 5 stars, whatever. That's not really indicative of what the game is. You may be able to go to rpg.net. They tend to be pretty good about writing, like a lot of guys will jump on there and just write general reviews about games old and new, as well as supplements that are coming out. So you may be able to find something there too. Of course, much like jumping into Amazon and looking at Haribo sugarless gummy bear reviews, which if you get the chance to do that, those are utterly hilarious. But buyer beware, in that sense. Somebody may be writing from a perspective that they just dislike the company, they're trying to hate on it. So just take it with a grain of salt and look at the language that they're using in the review. But I would say between those two, you probably stand a really good chance of finding something that you like. It's just a matter of getting a couple people together and probably being the person who runs it if you're that interested, and get some guinea pigs to play with you.
Yeah, and on that line, as far as like finding people, I've had really good luck with Discord groups, as well as Facebook groups. There's tons of local D&D groups out there that are on Facebook that are constantly looking for players. If you're looking for a particular game, I guarantee you'll find a group for it on Facebook somewhere. And then you just sort of network a little bit with that. You talk to one person, and then they talk to other people, and that's how I've been able to join a lot of my Discord games. A lot of my games right now, except for one, are streamed on Discord, and I found those through, funny enough, City Heroes on some of them. It's a MMO that I play. So it depends on the people that you know, and also just branching out into those different avenues where communities that people congregate.
Also mention as far as finding groups to play with, you have two options. You can play in person or you can play online, like digitally. Most of our group is local, but some of us are not. And also even the ones who are local, we live all over the Phoenix metro area. So we actually play remotely. And a lot of people since COVID have moved that direction. It's, I mean, there's something to be said for playing in person. It's a lot easier to, you know, set up a mat and, you know, your minis and stuff. If that's the kind of game that you want to play, you might look through or like go to your local gaming store.
Oh,
see,
Roll20.
Yeah,
For both
Roll20
those
I
reasons.
use
Right.
frequently for that.
Go to your local gaming store to maybe see what kind of groups they have. You know, they can maybe hook you up with other people. Now that remote gaming is a lot more common, there are a lot of utilities that you can use, like Roll20.
Yeah. D&D Beyond, I know there's some hate out there for that, but I use it and I love it. So
Yeah, there are a lot of options now to gaming remotely, and also
Demiplane is the alternative to that.
Demi, what
I
is
haven't heard of that one.
Demiplane is actually, it was kind of around, and then when D&D kind of did its, you know, OGL scandal, they basically they kicked that into high gear, and now Demiplane has Vampire the Masquerade, Pathfinder, Starfinder, and a bunch of other smaller games. So if you're looking for that type of content that you might get with D&D Beyond, like remote characters and resources and whatnot, you'll find that with Demiplane for some other games.
Also, Rachel, I meant to ask, by Discord gaming, do you mean like video chat gaming like we do, or do you mean like text-based?
Well, I do a little bit of
play by
both.
post kind of games?
So I do a combo of the text when we run scenes on Discord for Vampire, but I also am I'm in a D&D game that is video. We use Roll20 and D&D Beyond combined, and then I have another D&D game that is on Discord, but we don't do any video. It's all just us talking,
Like voice.
In a group chat, and we still use Roll20, and you know we manage our sheets and all that. So yeah, that's
Okay, so there are a lot of different formats that you have options for in case you're more comfortable with certain types of interaction than others. So that's a good option. I also wanted to mention you can find groups playing on Twitch if you want to see how a certain game feels. You can watch live plays of other people.
That's a good way
You
to
can
do it,
sometimes
too.
find those on YouTube also. One way that I found out, so when we started playing, I had never heard of Vampire before. I was completely new to it when Jerome invited me to play the game. And after playing with our group for a couple of years, I was really curious about the other White Wolf games, which, you know, Werewolf the Apocalypse, Sorcerer, Mage the Ascension, Mummy, and I was really curious to see what those other games were like, how they compared to Vampire. And White Wolf had like a virtual convention where they had a whole bunch of playthroughs, so you could just tune in on Twitch and watch some people play the game. And some people were like professional gamers or actors, and some people were just normal, you know, players. And that was a really good way to kind of get a feel for, am I interested in trying out this game for real? Am I interested in buying the materials? So that's another good option. Also coming to a convention like this, a lot of fan conventions have a gaming track, and you can just jump in and sign up and play a pickup game of some system that you
Like
never
Merp?
played. Yeah, why don't you want to talk about that?
I had played, so for those of you who don't know, way back in the day, and of course I'm dating myself, gamers, of course, had Dungeons and Dragons, but with Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and all that, with Tolkien being around, somebody got the wild idea of like, well, we could make this our own RPG. It's not Dungeon, we don't have to make it Dungeons and Dragons, and they did, and they called it Middle Earth Role Playing, and wow, that is a game system. It has.
That's what you would definitely call crunchy.
It is definitely crunchy. It's specific in the sense like the humans are all differentiate between like their nationalities, so they have a little bit of this or that depending upon where they're from. Same with dwarves or elves, so they really went specific like that. But they went and then made so for example with Dungeons and Dragons you say D20, you roll, and you get a critical hit, right? So then you just come up with on the fly of what you think it might look like. In this, they have chart upon chart upon chart that you can roll on as just god-awful or graphic or super specific, and even their spells. Like, we were laughing, she was playing a healer, and she's like looking through her spells to try and heal somebody. She's like, wait a minute, I can heal an eye socket? Wait, that's like way too specific. When is that going to happen? I pointed to one of the critical hit charts. She goes, oh. So they had heal eye socket at one of them, which was lower level, and they had like a nostril, I think we left
That
at.
is so specific.
They were super specific. It was definitely different.
But yeah, I mean,
We had a good time.
Yeah, but that would be a good way to experience, another game that if it's old and out of date, you could still probably find it on the cheap, to build up on. And the cool thing about that game is that they used a lot of the same artists that did like the map making for Tolkien's original stuff, or they did it in that style. So everything kind of kept with the flow. It wasn't like it deviated a bunch from that. So.
Hey, so we have about 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to turn it over for questions, or
Yeah,
do we want to talk
might as
more
well.
about? Okay.
Questions about anything?
Yes.
Yeah.
Up front.
So, like with Dungeons and Dragons D20 system, how is that different from the D10 system?
Actually, it's very different. So with Dungeons and Dragons, the D20, what you do is you roll, and then the way 3.5 on up goes is you roll your D20 and you have your modifier that goes into it, and then that hits your difficulty, right? With D10 systems, at least the earlier versions of Vampire, so from Vampire and all those systems from their version 1 up to their 20th anniversary, all operate the same way. So you have, in this way it's a little bit different, where you will have a stat, you will have a skill, and that gives you your dice pool to roll.
You want to give an example?
And then that's what I'm building up to. So,
Okay.
and then what you do here is, so say for example you have a strength of 5, you're a big beefy guy, and you are known for being a fighter, so you have a brawl of 5, so you got a total of 10 dice to roll.
Which is max for
Yeah, which would
a normal play.
typically max, yeah. So
one through 5.
you're going to take 10 D10 and you're going to roll that. Now, standard difficulty is anything 6 or higher on that die roll is considered a success. And then you count up your number of successes. If you have a specialty, your D10, if you roll a natural 10, kind of like D20, it'll explode and give you 2. If you roll any of your dice roll a 1, that subtracts from your available.
Which means you can
difficulties.
absolutely botch,
Yes, you
and
can.
botch hard.
Yes.
If you're rolling 10
So-
and you get 5 ones, you're screwed.
I've found those types of game systems, which there's a lot of games that mirror that type of dynamic. Cyberpunk 2020 and the new Cyberpunk Red do that as well, where it is a stat and a skill, and theirs is roll 1d10, you add them both together and you try to hit a difficulty check. But kind of same thing. If you roll a 1, you flubbed hard potentially. If you roll a 10 in that system, you roll again because it's exploding. So potentially you could have really nailed something if you keep rolling a d10. But a lot of games are shifting more to that dynamic. Like even the, I think it was even Fate and Icons and Fudge, all which are like superhero based games or more generic systems, like Fate is. They tend to work something like that. Their dice pool works a little bit differently, but it's the same. You have your stat, you have a skill, you make a roll, and then you're hitting something, target difficulty. Fate has special dice where you're rolling a d6, and it's like you either get a plus, a blank, or a minus. So.
Firefly was a really interesting system, in my opinion. You still have a stat and a skill, but depending on your
Competency.
level
Yeah.
of competency with that thing, you roll a bigger die. So if you're total noob with that skill, then you would roll a d4, and then if you're a little more, you would do a d6, d8.
Or if you were
D10.
Jane trying to punch somebody, you had a D12 for
Or
strength.
d12. I think it only went up. Did it go to up to
It
d12?
went up to D12, yeah. And that was a
so
good way to
then-
use your dice set
So
in
then
that
you would,
sense.
yeah, that's true. So you would use those 2 dice, whatever those 2 are, and then roll those both. And with the unfortunate result of if you roll a lower die, say a d4, you have a higher chance of rolling a 1. And if you roll 2 1s, then that's a super botch.
Yep, that's a messy.
Yeah, that was
So there was-
that was a very dangerous game. We had a lot of
I
really
liked the premise
really
behind that.
bad spills in that.
I like the premise behind that your die was your proficiency for your attribute and your skill. Because I was just pointing out to her, it was cool because you could use more of your dice set.
Yeah.
Which most people have, your
full
standard
set,
die set,
yeah.
but you almost never use a D8 or a D12 or, mostly it's the D20 and D6s, for the most part. So.
Yeah, but the bright side to that is kind of like we were saying in yesterday's panel. Bad rolls are an opportunity for really interesting role play, and we had some good times. We almost died many
Yes.
times, but
Right.
Yeah, I was curious, of all the games that you mentioned or some that you haven't, is there any that you'd recommend for like younger kids? As in like maybe simpler rules or
Outside of Dungeons and Dragons?
yeah.
Let's see. Of course, D&D is we're trying not to talk about that, but that is kind of the gold standard for a lot of that. I've heard a lot of good things about the Pathfinder Beginner Box. And in fact, in many ways, from all the reviews I've seen and people who have talked about it, it seems to be vastly superior than the Dungeons and Dragons starter box. They've really done a great job of condensing everything that you need into the box and making it easy to understand for people.
what are some of the good ones that you reviewed it with the other podcast?
I can't with family gaming tabletop. No, I can't remember because we had those were all guests.
I know it was a while ago.
Yeah, that was over a year ago at this point. But if you're looking for games specifically for kids, there is a site called TTRPG Kids, I think it's what it is, and they do nothing but collections of games aimed specifically at kids. So naturally, of course, that would be good for beginners too, because target audiences, clearly you're trying to get them into gaming and make it easier for them to understand. So, good question.
Thank you.
Do you have any suggestions on good TTRPG systems that are good for like one-shots?
Yes. Everything that I have read so far, it's Freely Gaming. The guys who do Alien and some of those, the newer licensed property games, I think. I think maybe even Starship Troopers is in that, but their games are absolutely great for what they do. So like if you were trying to recreate Aliens, Alien 3, like any, I'm just picking on them because one's coming to mind, but they have other game systems that fall into there. From everything I've read, they absolutely nail the dynamic of what it is they're aiming for. But go beyond that, not so much. So they're like really, really good for, 1, maybe 2-shot games, if it ran long or something like that, because they've really done a great job of instilling the essence of that series of movies.
Can you repeat the name of it?
I think it's Free League Gaming or Free Gaming League or something like that. If you look up Alien, the RPG, it's the company that makes that. And they have a whole line of other, and they have other licensed properties too. I'm just failing to think of, but it's the same thing. Whatever whatever those guys do for their dynamic, they seem to be really good about doing that. But from everybody I've talked to and I've looked at, they don't seem to be great for long form. So if you're just looking for like Beer and Pretzels game to, to make up characters and have a good 1 or 2 shot, you're probably well served for something like that. And then we had a question back here.
Just to help out, so for kids 6 to 12, Hero Kids is great, it's D&D, but it's made for little kids. So it's like, the troll stole the birthday cake, and all these things. So that's all it is.
Awesome.
Yeah, there are a few good
That's
ones.
Hero Kids?
Yeah.
Hero Kids, yeah.
And it's all D6s, it's on a 3x5 card. You can download everything and print out your printer at home.
Yeah.
That's
There's,
awesome.
yeah. If you back to that point, if you look up anything along those lines, there's a whole kind of sub movement in gaming specifically aimed at that. So there's like all kinds of people out there trying to, take their own angle at making games, RPGs specifically, far more accessible to kids. So you'll probably find a trove of information.
I am running a free league game tomorrow too, so it must try.
Oh, cool. Yeah, there you go.
But yeah, all the free league gaming is great, but it's all very much, there's no campaign setting.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
There's like, they don't advance ever, so it's good for.
Oh, so there we go. Thank you.
We have 7 minutes, so let's take one more question and then we'll do last words.
Right here.
Could you discuss narratives of games versus crunchy games?
Yeah, actually. So historically, Dungeons and Dragons was a crunchy game. The idea behind it, and this is just to kind of help set the premise.
And can you elaborate on what we mean by crunchy?
Yeah. Well, I was about to, but
Sorry.
thank you. No, it's fine. So essentially, crunchy being, it's all about the numbers. And if you don't have the numbers, you're trying to get more of the numbers. So Dungeons and Dragons back in the day, if you didn't have a magical sword, you wanted a magical sword. Well, if you had a magical sword, you wanted the +2 magical sword, and so on and so forth. It's like, that was the dynamic. You kept wanting to build and improve on your character. You wanted the neat loot. You wanted to raid the dungeon. You wanted as much coin as you could get because that translated into buying the biggest castle, buying, whatever. And a lot of the original game system was nowhere near as dynamic as it is now, and I'll explain the difference. So original Dungeons & Dragons was roll a d20, consult a chart based upon the type of armor, then maybe you hit or not. Whereas now it's a standard number based on something. That's a little bit different between the crunch. The crunch is, there's a lot more math that goes behind it, which gives you, I guess a good way to put it is, it's built into the rules, so there's not a lot of arguing about, can or can't this not do it. It's usually pretty clearly defined. The dynamic or narrative, like Vampire, for example, that's more explanative in the sense of you're just trying to build a story and you have like a generic pool that says, okay, well, I got X amount of successes versus X amount of this. So it's way more storytelling element as opposed to trying to get the numbers to line up to do what it is that you want to do. Like Pathfinder First Edition would be a very crunchy game too in that sense. A lot of people, if you encounter any game and anybody's talking about optimum player builds, that's probably a crunchy game. It's going to have a lot of math behind it. If you're into that, great. Or they have calculations that go into, oh, well, if I'm always rolling this number or close to it, I'm pretty much guaranteed a hit or a success or whatever. Whereas narrative games like the Vampire games, Fate, Fudge, some of the other more newer ones, they're way more dynamic in the sense that they're trying to involve player interactivity in a story as opposed to so much the numbers of the success or what it is you actually got.
It really depends on what kind of play style you're going for.
Yeah.
There's a game for everything.
Yeah, there's definitely benefits to both. Like if you're really one crunchy, like kind of what he was mentioning, hero games is probably the way you're going to want to go. It's a gigantic book, build literally anything that you want, and Champions is its namesake. That's the game that's or the system that's kept it going. You can build literally any type of superhero you want, but it's pretty hardcore math. They expect like 2 to 3 hours just making your character, not your backstory. So, But with that,
That's it.
yeah, we should probably get going here. So thank you again, everybody, for coming.
We still have 3 minutes.
I know, but it's hard to stop at.
So I wanted to just briefly have us say what our favorite system is,
Oh, okay.
and then we'll close out.
Okay.
I mean, y'all already know it's Street Fighter.
She already said it. I would probably say mine, right now, it's a toss-up. I'm really enjoying the Marvel Superheroes game for that more narrative aspect, and Vampire for the same thing, but vastly different game systems, so.
I would agree with that, actually. I'm really enjoying our superhero game. But mine is Vampire because I really like the system, and it gives me as a writer
Lots of fodder.
the kind of narrative that I crave as a player. So yeah, that's my favorite. So we are Lost Tribes Gaming. Again, you can find us on Twitch. We stream each of our games every 2 weeks. So every week we have 2 or 3 games streaming. So check us out on Twitch. Again, we're also on Facebook, and you can find our videos on YouTube.
Thank you guys for coming.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good one. Unplug my thingy. Here.
Still on?
Yeah, it is. I'm about to
It's
turn
okay,
off.
you can run through.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's fine.
What was the name of the vampire one?
Vampire
the
the
Masquerade.
Masquerade.
Okay.
Masquerade?
Yeah, of the Masquerade. The one we play is
Vampire.
20th anniversary. The
Vampire
newest,
the Masquerade.
yeah, the newest
Okay.
one is, which is vastly different, is Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition.
I am more on the RPG side of things. I am the person who gives the 2-page backstory to this one with the Cliff Notes version. Question, because I've got a feeling trying to Google this will be a nightmare with Dungeons and Dragons. Do you know any other tabletop RPGs that is very dragon-y, where the dragons may be more good and a dragon? Just dragons?
I do not.
I don't know.
That's super specific. I think people who end up asking for that usually make the campaign about that. So like they make it
Yeah.
about
Play a dragon.
Probably
Dragonborn or
more
something. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
They'll make it all about Dragonborn and then
tailoring the story or something.
in Pathfinder.
Yeah, because I literally just finished Dragonlance, the friend that was asking about it. I was the one who was trying to unionize the dragon army because the dragon queen is an awful ruler and I can lead them better.
Nice.
My
Nice.
girl's whole thing was she was trapped in an orb of dragonkind for 1,300 years, was at the end of the last war. The friend did a gold dragon, learned a lot draconic and a bunch about it. Got talked into this one. All the rest of the party hates dragons. She's like, no, they're good. And also, we're going to call the red dragon. They're a disgrace to dragonkind. Okay, thank you, bye. Yeah.
Nice, that sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah,